Hello, friends. Lee C. Camp. You're listening to No Small Endeavor. This is our unabridged interview with Rick Steves. Rick Steves, the travel guru beloved by thousands, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions. I would say probably millions. This is a lovely conversation with Rick. You know, sometimes I'll hear from people saying, I feel like I know you because I listen to you and you're in my ear all the time. This was how I felt with Rick Steves, because the last time I was with Rick, I was walking through St. Peter's in Rome, and with Rick in my ear telling me about the experience as I was walking along in one of his tour guides. So a great conversation. We're talking about his new book that he had out called On the Hippie Trail, From Istanbul to Kathmandu, about a early travel experience that he had. I think it was right out of college, the last year that the so-called hippie trail was open, and the way that influenced him and shaped his posture towards the world. A lot of great stuff in this interview. Enjoy. And not only enjoy this interview, go out and travel in the ways that Rick Steves suggests you travel, or so I suggest. Enjoy. Rick Steves is not just a travel writer. He's an advocate for a richer, more humane way of seeing the world. Through his best-selling guidebooks and his PBS show Rick Steves Europe, he's helped millions of travelers navigate foreign lands with confidence and respect. And beyond logistics, his work emphasizes that travel can be a political, even spiritual act, a way of confronting our assumptions, cultivating empathy, and learning to live as global citizens. And he has a new book, On the Hippie Trail, Istanbul to Kathmandu, and the Making of a Travel Writer. Welcome, Rick Steves.
Nice to be with you, Lee.
It's a pleasure to have you with us, and have followed your work for a long time. And as an academic, I've gotten to travel a lot, and I've always seen it as a way that has widened my understanding of the world and allowed me to see a lot of things about myself and my own history. And so grateful to get to talk about your own work with us today.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love to talk to academics because I feel like I'm amplifying my ideas through somebody who really cares.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Well, yeah. And I was recently in Italy for 3 months, and it was a rather intimate experience to have you walking through St. Peter's with me in my ear, talking to me as we went through St. Peter's. So.
Yeah, I've got this free app called Rick Steves Audio Europe, and for people who get into it, there's 60 tours. So you spend a good part of your vacation with me whispering to you in your ear. Look up there, just around the corner. Try a little bit of this. Well, that's a lot of fun.
And you've got a new book out, On the Hippie Trail, Istanbul to Kathmandu. So I'm wondering, before we talk about that book, though, I would love to ask you, what's your earliest travel memory, or earliest one or two travel memories that you think might have helped make you the person you have become?
Well, when I was a kid, it was just all camping and boating here in the Pacific Northwest. And my family, when we did get on an airplane, it would be go to Hawaii. But when I was in high school, my dad started importing pianos from Germany. He was a piano teacher, a piano tuner. And I got to go with him to see the piano factories in Germany and go up to see the relatives in Norway. And I would have never thought to go to Europe. I may not even have a passport right now had my dad not decided to take this leap from being a humble piano tuner to being a piano importer. And we went to the great piano factories in Vienna and all across Germany and then up to Norway. And I'll never forget on that first trip. I was 14 years old. I was in the big park behind the palace in Oslo, and it was called Vigeland Sculpture Gardens, and it's filled with these concrete statues, and very Nordic statues. And it was speckled with families having a good time together, parents loving their children. And my parents were loving me. And they were I remember I was little and they were big, and they were looking down at me and compromising greatly on their trip. They had never been to Europe before. They took me along, and I knew it was costing them money, and they were not able to do a lot of stuff they wanted to do because they wanted me to have that experience. They were loving me ridiculously. And then I looked around the park and I saw other parents loving their kids just as ridiculously. And it occurred to me, whoa, my goodness, this world is filled with equally lovable little kids like me, little children of God. I would not have had that very, very fundamental eureka had I not been there. And it really stuck with me. The world is filled with billions, literally, of equally lovable little children of God. That was a pretty cool revelation for a 14-year-old to have. Later on in that same trip, it was 1969, I was on the carpet in front of the TV with my cousins in Norway, and we were all gathered to watch Neil Armstrong walk on the moon. And as a little 14-year-old, it occurred to me, back home, all my friends are waving their American flags and saying, "Go USA, USA." And I was in Norway realizing this is not an American accomplishment only. It is a human accomplishment. And little experiences like that broadened my perspective. And for decades, I've been building on that appetite for nurturing this notion that you learn more about your home by leaving it and looking at it from a distance. And culture shock is not something to avoid, it's something to embrace. It's the growing pains of a broadening perspective. It's a good thing. It's why we travel, and it just needs to be curated. And I get to curate it. But I'm certainly not in business to help people avoid culture shock.
Those are lovely, lovely tales and lovely experiences. So then you go on, and at some point in your early 20s, you do this big trip that then becomes the subject of your most recent book. And are you out of college at this point when you do this big hike?
Well, I was traveling every summer because I was a piano teacher and my students would not practice in the summer. So I said, I'm not going to fight this. I'll see you in September. I'm going to Europe. And I just traveled for kicks. And those were the very best trips. Yeah. And after graduating from high school, I did the basic 3-month year rail blitz around Europe with my good buddy. And then 5 years later, we're both out of college and we decided, let's go east. And we had, because I'd done Europe and Europe was pretty comfortable. And I'd been to Istanbul, but I'd never been east of Istanbul. And I always was intrigued by India. And we decided to do the hippie trail. It was the epic road trip on this planet for backpackers. It was back when the Beatles were going to India to hang out with the Maharishi, all that kind of stuff. And so we met and we headed east. I remember leaving Istanbul, going east, and it occurred to me, not a single soul knows I even exist between here and Seattle. And I don't know a single soul between here and Seattle. There's no internet, no parents to pick you up if you fall, just a couple of traveler's checks in your money belt, no good information, heading east, hoping to find a one-way ticket when you got to India to fly back to Europe to catch your flight back home. It was pretty ballsy,
indeed,
I got to say.
Indeed.
And we had the time of our life. It was epic coming-of-age trip. And the strange thing, Lee, is that while everybody else was out drinking and having a great time, I was writing my journal. And I was just diligently writing this journal. I wrote 1,000 words a day.
Wow.
60,000 words over the course of the trip in a hardback book, a real book, a 200-page book. I had beautiful penmanship. I can't even read my penmanship now, but in tiny print. And I filled up that book. And it was like netting butterflies as they fluttered by, I remember. And I also documented it with great photography. And the book and the photographs survived. And I forgot all about the book. I don't think I read more than 2 pages of it in 40 years. And then during COVID, I had some time on my hands, discovered the book. I have 100 people on my staff. I was determined to keep them employed, even though we had no income for a couple of years. So I was finding things for them to do. I said, okay, type up all my journals, please. And they typed up the hippie trail book. And you mentioned it's my newest book. Well, it's also my oldest book because I wrote it in 1978 when I was 23 years old. My first real guidebook came out 2 years later, the first edition of Europe Through the Back Door in 1980. But this was the book I wrote when I was still a piano teacher. I didn't intend to be a travel writer. It was a very selfish thing. I wrote this journal just to remember those beautiful moments. And there's something good about having the discipline to write something down right there in the field, squishing bugs onto the pages just to get them out of your way. And it's more vivid. And I wrote this and, again, forgot about it until COVID, then dusted it off, found it. It was really quite raw. It was quite good, but in a very kind of juvenile 23-year-old way, And I just wanted to share it with the world. And I'm very tuned into not wanting to do, what do you call that kind of press when it's just your own ego? Vanity press. My mom will think this is interesting. Well, that's not good enough. But my publisher read it and they said, this is great. And it turned out to be the only book I've ever had that was on the New York Times bestseller list. It really was a big success last year. I did a national road tour and giving talks and all that kind of stuff. But it's like an anthropological dig into a 23-year-old version of myself when I'm exactly 3 times that old right now. I forgot a lot of stuff. I read it, and it matched my memories in a kind of a fun way to see how do things change in your memory over the decades.
What were some of the...
This was the gospel truth because I wrote it down right there for myself. I wasn't shaping it or couching it or polishing it for anybody else. It was just for me. And it was really fun.
What were some of the surprises as you looked back, as you rediscovered that book? Any surprises about yourself that you had forgotten?
Well, what I do when I give my lecture on this and think about it is I'm trying to psychoanalyze myself. How did I become what I've become? I'm a prolific travel writer. I've been doing the same thing with laser focus for 45 years. I've got a staff of 100 people. We're all mission driven. I've got technology beyond my wildest dreams to amplify my teaching. Who was I and where did I come from? And I could see the little seeds of this on this trip. This is before I was political. This is before I really was interested in the value of travel. But now I'm evangelical about the value of travel. And I could see a lot of where that passion comes from there, plus the value of good information. I was going behind the dark side of the moon without a guidebook, going east from Istanbul. Also, I look back on it, Lee, and it occurs to me how clueless I was. I mean, now when I travel, I'm tuned into all the political stuff going on because I'm into that. But back then, I didn't know that we were the last year anybody could do the hippie trail. This is that ultimate road trip from Istanbul to Kathmandu. That's what kids did back then if they wanted to do the ultimate. And the next year, the Shah was overthrown and Khomeini turned Iran into a theocracy, and it was the Islamic Revolution. No more tourism there. The next year, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan and it became a war zone. No more tourism there. And then by the time things were a little easier, people were beyond that kind of long hippie bus kind of travel. They would just fly into the resort in Goa or whatever. So this 1978, when I did this, it was the last year of this hippie trail era. And, thousands of kids did it, but nobody documented it as diligently as I did and then photographed it with the material surviving to this day. It was just a freaky thing. And then I have a good relationship with my publisher and people know who I am. So I could publish it and people would pay attention to it. And it's just really kind of a big surprise in my life just in the last couple of years. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes, that sounds like wonderful.
I mean, the subtitle of the book, Lee, is the making of a travel writer.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what it was because I was a piano teacher. And when I got home from that trip, I let my students go. And I turned my recital hall into a travel lecture hall. And I focused on the value of helping Americans travel smart.
Fascinating. So just like that, upon your return.
And to this day, my mission is to equip and inspire Americans to venture beyond Orlando. I mean, for a lot of people, where are you traveling? Oh, we're going to Orlando. Oh, it's Disney World. Oh, it's Cancun. Oh, we're going to Vegas. We're going to Mazatlan. We're going to take a Caribbean cruise. We're going to Disney World. Come on, do better than that. Raise the bar. Go to Portugal.
So, but besides all of the ways in which that shaped your trajectory towards the work you've done, would you say that there were any particular, more broadly human virtues that especially got formed in you in that early trek across Asia?
Right now, I am motivated in my teaching a lot by my Christian faith. So I'm really into love your neighbor, I'm really into the fact that if you believe in God, whether you go to church, whether you're a Christian, whether monotheistic religion, if you believe in a God, then you believe that everybody on this planet is children of that heavenly Father. We identify it as a guy up in heaven, but a heavenly maker, whatever. But we're all children of that heavenly Father. And that means we're all brothers and sisters. And that means love thy neighbor has nothing to do with proximity. When we travel, we get to know the family. When we travel, we get to know our neighbors. And when we travel thoughtfully, and if we are people of faith, believing in a God, we know that suffering, love, joy, need has nothing to do with proximity. Joy and love and hunger across the sea is no less real than joy and love and hunger and suffering across the street. So in my approach to being a good citizen, I'm global, which is a fundamental thing. So, for a lot of people, they would do anything for somebody that's needy across the street. But they can be brutal to somebody across the sea and not lose a wink of sleep over it. And this is pretty heavy stuff. And as a citizen of the most powerful and potentially positive force on this planet, I'm into it.
Yeah.
I take responsibility for it. And I've found my niche, and it is broadening my perspective through travel. And if I want to be a person I'm proud of, if I want to be a person who can inspire others, if I want to be true to my faith and love my neighbor and all that, I love to put it through a global perspective, the lens of a global perspective. And that's a challenge for a lot of people who have not traveled.
Yeah.
So I like to be the annoying one. In a loving way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think of myself as like the medieval jester. Back in the Middle Ages, the king actually paid this guy to be annoying. He gave him room and board, if I understand correctly, to leave the castle and hang out with the people in the barrio and learn about the jokes they're telling and what they're really thinking, and then coming back home and telling the king the truth. And as travelers, I like to do that. I like to go where we learn we are not the norm. And as a teacher, I would imagine you're into this too. It's really important for us not to be too ethnocentric.
Yeah.
The world's not a pyramid with us on top and everybody else trying to figure it out. I mean, I got news for America. The only thing exceptional about America, I believe, is our ability to think that in God's eyes we are exceptional. We're richer, we're more powerful, maybe we're more materialistic, maybe we have a shorter attention span. I mean, there may be things about us that are uniquely American, but to be more precious in God's eyes makes no sense at all. And I really embrace that. I love that idea. And to follow through on your question of, how is travel? I'm just thinking out loud, kind of exploring these ideas right now as you ask me. But travel's really good for my faith because it reminds me I'm not alone. And I travel alone, but I'm never alone, which is a very cool thing.
Was that sort of explicit intentional engagement with your faith there, even in that early trip, that epic trip across Asia?
It was in a rough form.
Yeah.
My travel partner, Jean, had just graduated from Stanford with a degree in comparative religious studies. And I had just graduated with a degree in history. And we complemented each other with what we had been interested in college. And I like the way when you travel, serendipity knocks on your door and new realizations that they may jumble how orderly your thoughts are, knock on the door. I think, a lot of people always tell me have a safe trip. It really bugs me. Just do not tell me have a safe trip. Tell me have a good trip.
Yeah.
Tell me bon voyage like we used to before we were so fearful. But when somebody tells me have a safe trip, sometimes I wonder, because statistically it's safer to travel now than it was when people said bon voyage. There's no question about it. So, if you tell me have a safe trip, I'll tell you I'll say, well, you have a safe stay at home. Because where I'm going statistically, and I know statistics are optional these days, but where I'm going statistically is safer than where you're staying. But I think what safe might mean is don't mess up your pre-assumptions or your norms.
Yeah.
Don't challenge the comfort of your privileged order in your life. Don't travel in a way where you learn things that, if you're going to be honest to what you just learned, makes your status quo tougher to maintain as a thoughtful, caring citizen of this planet. That's the danger of travel, is you come home with more sensibilities. Thomas Jefferson said, travel makes a person wiser if less happy. Wiser if less happy. Choose. Do you want to be wiser or do you want to be happier? When you travel, you need to make that choice. And I just love how travel complicates your life.
Yeah, indeed. On the issue of fear, and you noted the change in that regard here of late. What are you observing about that? How are the frames around safety or fear mongering? How's that all affecting travel, affecting your own notions of travel and possibilities?
Well, fear is affecting us all right now. We're losing our democracy because of fear. Just like countless societies who've had dictators lose their freedom because that dictator knows how to capitalize on fears. And what are our fears? I guess our fears are the reality that demographically we're facing a radical change in the future. Because of our fears, we are in a mindset where we want to build walls to protect us. And I've thought a lot about this because I want to be as safe as anybody else. I think stability and safety is really important. But I know that you have to make a choice. Do you want a mindset of building walls or building bridges? And I firmly believe if you want to be safe and if you want your children to have a good life, the worst thing you can do is rely on walls. Bridges, that's what makes us safe. Connecting with and working with the other 96% of humanity. That's a tough sell these days in this country. But fear is for people who don't get out very much. The flip side of fear is understanding, and we gain understanding when we travel. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
You gain understanding when you travel. What is my worldview shaped by? My worldview is shaped by talking to people who see things differently than I do. What is the worldview of a typical fearful American who just wants walls and wants America to be first? That worldview is shaped. The worldview of a person who does not have a passport is shaped by fear-mongering commercial TV news. And if that shaped my worldview, I'd want walls too, But I'm so thankful that I've got the gumption. You don't need to be rich and powerful to have a broad view. You just have to have the gumption to organize your life in a way where you can get out there and go south of the border. South of the border. That's so beautiful, especially if you're a person of faith, because you can be inspired by the people of south of the border that aren't as rich as us, that have a stronger faith than us. people who are not as educated in the conventional way as us, but who have a stronger faith than us. And we can learn from each other. And I just love going, quote, south of the border. To me, south of the border is in the global south. It's just an understanding that the half of humanity is trying to live on $5 a day. Half of humanity probably will never see their name on a plane ticket. That's quite an interesting idea.
Yeah.
If there's 8 billion people on the planet, 4 billion are trying to live on what I pay every day for my Starbucks latte and trying to raise their kids on that. And I know that's okay. $5 if you've got stability, if you've got a reasonable government, if you've got education and access to health care, that can be okay. But if you are in extreme poverty, that's what the United Nations calls people who are living on $2 a day or less, then that's hopelessness. And that's a prescription for broken governments and chaos and conflict and all sorts of anger. And that's what makes our world a dangerous place. And one result of all of my travels, Lee, is that I really love to advocate. That's advocacy. That's like lobby for poor and hungry people in our government. That's why I support Bread for the World in Washington, D.C. And that's why I'm heartbroken that our government decided to save a few $1 billion by zeroing out USAID, because it's soft power. It makes this world more stable and it makes America stronger. And at the same time, it's love your neighbor. But you can totally make a rationale for that money as a smart, greedy, make America first investment, and at the same time giving millions of people hope, and making our country one we can be proud of. But when I travel, I'm so tuned into the fact that 10% of humanity is living in extreme poverty, $2 a day or less. And we were on a trajectory to overcome that. We had cut extreme poverty by 50% in one generation. And then in the last decade or so, that graph has ticked up. And it's gone now from, I believe, 800 million to 1 billion people who are in extreme poverty. And with climate change, with conflict, with corruption, and with President Trump ending the funding of USAID, which is the main funder of the United Nations World Food Program, which provided gas for all the NGOs to do their work, provided the power, filled the tank. Extreme poverty is going to go up, and that's going to make our world a less safe, less stable place, and it's going to make the United States smaller and more in need of these unfortunate walls. So that's complicated, isn't it? And I wish I was smarter in all of this, but I just love, as a travel teacher, to help inspire people to travel in a way where they get out of their comfort zone and talk to other people and come home with that most beautiful souvenir. And that's a broader perspective.
You're causing me to flash back to when my wife and I were young marrieds. I had just finished seminary and she had just finished doing her MBA, and we were invited to go spend half a year in Nairobi, Kenya. And I remember back home here in Nashville, sitting in the car listening to a public radio story that at the time the global population was 6 billion, and this new study had indicated there were 2 billion people living on $2 a day or less. And listening to that right before this trip, and me saying out loud to myself in the car, I have no idea what that even means or what that looks like.
Right.
And then within 2 weeks, I knew what it looked like, and would get to have friends that that I grew to love and showed me great hospitality.
Now, isn't that fundamental? Not only to know about extreme poverty, but to actually have friends who are in that world.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it fundamentally changed who we are. And it becomes, and there's always as well a sort of irony of privilege, right? In that even that I can tell that story and look back and tell that story indicates a sort of privilege that I have. And at the same time, I think at least calls me to try to be a good steward of that knowledge and that experience. But I don't know, how do you think about the privilege of travel in light of these realities?
You said stewardship or stewarding. I have no problem with my privilege. I'm just honest about it. I'm the beneficiary of a lot of good luck. So I'm a well-educated, affluent, white male from the richest, most powerful country on earth, the United States, living in a beautiful corner of that country. But I do, so, I mean, I'm kind of lucky. The real question is, what am I going to do with that privilege, I guess? And that's what's been a big force in my life, is stewardship. I'm really into stewardship. Our environment involves stewardship. Our ability to travel involves stewardship. Or the education that we've been able to gain involves stewardship. How are you going to use that money? How are you going to use that power? How are you going to use that awareness? How am I going to use my celebrity? These are all issues of stewardship. And not because I want to be lauded or respected as a certain way, but just to me, that makes me feel good about who I am. It makes me feel true to my values, true to my faith. It makes it my life more rewarding and fun. And it also burdens me with the constant understanding that I could go play pétanque for the rest of the afternoon, or I could make this world a better place. So I'm kind of a workaholic because I've got a niche that I love. I feel like it's God-given. And much as I love to play pétanque, which is really popular in my town right now, and I've got friends, I'm looking at them right now out my window playing pétanque. It's a beautiful day. But I'm here at my desk doing my work because that's where my heart is. It's stewardship. I wish people had more of an idea about stewardship, because then privilege would be a springboard rather than a secret or something to be embarrassed about.
What sorts of experiences have you had as you travel abroad? Any particular stories or episodes come to mind in which you especially became aware of your own privilege and aware of the necessity for you of good stewardship?
Well, when you travel, you travel thoughtfully, you carbonate that experience with little vivid anecdotes, little nuggets of gold if you're a travel writer. You're in Iran for 10 days making a TV show, and you come home with 4 or 5 moments that you rely on for decades in your teaching. And I don't have the time to get into all these moments, but just when you travel, there are these little magic moments that you grab, and they let you share the value of that experience. They let your passion for this get a little more traction when you talk to other people. You can look at the numbers of economic struggles and poverty and so on, and if you're into numbers, they can have an impact. But if you've been in a thatched hut in Ethiopia with a dirt floor, with the cow right there with the little kids, and steaming cow pies, and those hollow looks of very hungry kids looking at you while you're there with your TV crew, and a fireplace, an open fire on the floor with no chimney, in a smoke-filled room, and a mother whose father has left her, is probably drunk and womanizing, and a woman who's stuck with the kids and one cow. And you realize that open fireplace on the dirt floor is consuming 5 times as much wood as if they had a modern fireplace there. And the fact that there's no chimney fills their lungs with smoke. And a modern fireplace would not only be more efficient, but it'd be more healthy. And if that woman had a little education, showed that she knew how she nourished her children in the first 1,000 days of their life, prenatal and postnatal, would determine if that child would be stunted or not as an adult. And if the child didn't get the proper nourishment in the first 1,000 days of their life, they would never be able to perform as God intended them to. And if they did get the nourishment, they could be a functioning, fully productive human being and build a society that would be more stable. There's these kind of things that you understand, but when you go there and you see it, you understand it in a fully different way. It's like going from black and white to high definition color. And that's the beauty. That in so many ways is the beauty of travel. So you see the impact of uneducated mothers who have to abandon their kids every day to walk for water. Those kids, sorry as that scene I just painted was, it's even worse because the mom has to leave every morning for 3 hours to walk for water. When it only cost $5,000 to drill a well for that thirsty community. And then all the moms could stay home and take care of their kids, and they'd have safe water to help keep them clean and nourished. I mean, how could you not come up with $5,000 to give 50 mothers in that village the opportunity not to walk across the county every morning abandoning their kids, but walk across the square every morning? And then let's say you're just like the typical right-wing American right now that wants to put America first. And everything is for us, win, lose. Well, okay, let's just say that's the goal. Well, what's the value of the soft power when those moms can walk across the square and pump water for their families, and every time they pump that water, every morning, because we gave them that well, we could afford $5,000, what would they think? God bless America. Every time they pumped water, God bless America. God bless America. America gave me this water. Why did America give me this unfortunate person in this godforsaken little corner of the dusty, thirsty world, ravaged by corruption and war? Why did America give me water? Because America cares. America is the winning solution. You can couch this in America first. And for the cost of one extra soldier overseas, you could drill 100 wells every year. Now that's not lunatic liberal. That's practical. America first, stability, safety, American values, inspiring others that we are the way. There's so many reasons to have soft power. Forgive me, Lee, I get excited about this. Because why did we zero this out this year in the name of America first? You know, I'm into water for desperate people. Every time I take a shower, I'm aware. Every time I wait for the water to get warm, I waste water just so I can wait for it to get warm. I'm thinking about what would people do for this too cold water who have to walk for it every morning? And I'm thinking about what about the days before we had this new ethic when we used to help communities that are thirsty and demoralized and frightened and angry have water. We could do that. We could give the world water. It would not cost us very much money. And we could do that. And you could do it because you love your neighbor. Wow. But of course, in the privacy of the voting booth, how many Christians vote for love your neighbor? They vote for what's in my interest right now. Not the future, not the poor, not people in the global south. People with crosses on their lapels and crosses on their necklaces. They vote in the privacy of the voting booth, or wherever they vote in a greedy, unchristian way. It's fascinating to me. And that's why Thomas Jefferson said, travel makes a person wiser if less happy. You don't need to have the sensibility. You can go back to La La Land for the rest of your life. There's only one guidebook that outsells my Rick Steves Italy guidebook, and that's the guidebook to Disney World.
Huh.
And I can't compete with that. That's La La Land. That's La La travel.
Huh.
I don't even worry about how much that sells. I'm into reality travel because reality travel connects us with our beautiful world. But it comes with this burden that I really treasure, this awareness that there are solutions, and America could be a leader in that regard.
Yeah. I think another thing that I have so deeply appreciated about privilege of travel is the way in which, perhaps to some, ironically, it helps me to understand myself better and my own history better. And so what I mean by that is, like years ago, I got a small grant to go spend a month in the Middle East, and I did three weeks in Israel, Palestine, and a week in Istanbul. And I was doing a project on basically writing a book on a kind of dipping my toe into interreligious dialogue about war and peacemaking matters. And what I discovered was that in spending time with a number of Muslim theologians and academics, I actually began to understand my own Christian faith better out of those conversations. I understood who I was in more pointed, fascinating ways, I think, than before those kind of conversations. Similarly, I think I've understood what it means to be an American better by spending time in Europe, by learning the history of England and the UK, by learning the history of Italy and so forth, by spending a semester in Santiago, Chile, and knowing a bit about the Cold War and the way it impacted Central America and South America. And so I continue to find that while it does all of these other things we've been talking about and calls me to empathy and thoughtful travel, it also teaches me better who I am. But I don't know, do you resonate with that or thoughts on that?
Well, you're an admirable case of somebody whose curiosity and compassion knows no bounds. You reach out knowing it might complicate your life. You recognize a challenge you have as an individual, that you might be afraid of this or not understand this properly, and your solution would be to go over there and meet it. Is that fair to say?
I certainly have experienced that, yes.
Yeah. And I think that's been, for me, such a joy, because I was raised by a Norwegian family to be a Lutheran. Well, why am I a Lutheran? Is it because it's right, or because my grandparents came over on the boat from Norway? It's probably because my grandparents came over on the boat from Norway.
It can't be because it's right to be a Lutheran.
So that's I just have to be real about that, I'm fascinated by my relation with the Catholic Church. And, for years, I'd go to St. Peter's Basilica and I'd be pissed off. I'd go inside and I'd think, come on, where are all these saints in the Bible? And who paid for all this gilding? And, all this da-da-da. And it got me in a bad mood. And then one day, about 10 years ago, I thought, come on, Rick, park your Protestant sword at the door and go in as a temporary Roman Catholic. And it's made all the difference in the world. And I'm so thankful for that new approach.
Huh.
And I love my times when I immerse myself in a Catholic kind of religious wonder in my travels. I really do. I know a lot of Protestants that they get angry when they're at a Catholic service. Try to go to church in the Mediterranean world without a Catholic service. And conversely, try to go to a Catholic service in Norway. So I think it's really great to be able to open up, and that's just within Christian denominations. And then the bigger challenge is to step into another monotheistic faith altogether, like Islam. And that's been a personal challenge of mine. And I think if you look at things that I've produced, I'm quite determined and focused on helping Americans not be afraid of Islam, but to understand it. Because by the nature of our news coverage, we get, our idea of Islam is a bunch of radical Islamic terrorists. And, there's as many Christian terrorists as there are Islamic terrorists, I think, if you look at it. But I want to know what's the truth from Islam. And I was just in Istanbul, a lot this year, and I love it. And I bring part of the stewardship of the platform I have as a TV producer for public television, where I can produce TV shows where we can respect people's intelligence and assume an attention span, is to bring home a thoughtful look at another faith in a way that people don't necessarily join that faith, but they celebrate it and can respect it. Because there's so many silly ideas we get when we don't dig deeper for a more thorough understanding. And that's certainly true with the Christian approach to Islam. So now when I hear a call to prayer, you know what I'm talking about from the minaret. 5 times a day, they warble this, Allah Akbar, God is great, and there's one God, prophet, and there's one God, and he is Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Well, I've got a more sophisticated understanding of that now. And now when I'm in a town and there's this cacophony of calls to prayer from minarets all across the horizon, it's just a beautiful thing. And I envision a global wave of praise. You know that wave that goes through a stadium when everybody goes up and down and up with their arms and down. Well, the call to prayer is a global wave of praise swinging across the planet from Malaysia to Morocco and beyond, that swings across the planet as fast as the world turns because it's tied in with the sunrise and the sunset. And I see it now as that beautiful call to praise. And I know that when you say there's one God and he is Allah, what it really means is you're coming out of a heritage where there's a lot of gods, lower G. And of all these gods, there's just one that matters, and that's the God with a capital G. And Allah is just the Arabic word for God. So when a Muslim says there's one God and he is Allah, what he's really saying is, out of all these gods, lower G, there's one that matters. And we believe in the God, capital G, which happens to be Allah in Arabic. If Christian nationalists understood that little bit, they'd be less inclined to be so darn threatened by Islam. You can see it's a beautiful thing from a different culture.
When you travel, what sorts of routines or habits do you try to put in place that maybe you do not have at home, if any?
That's a good question. Something I've learned lately is when serendipity knocks, say yes. Because I need moments. As a travel writer, I need those magic moments. And if everything is scheduled and if everything is planned and organized, I'm not going to get a lot of serendipity. And the real serendipity, or the real travel magic, is when you're off on some impromptu adventure. I wrote a book called Travel as a Political Act. And half of that book is sharing experiences I had while visiting countries we're basically not supposed to go, places my government doesn't want me to go. And, as a free-spirited American, I've sort of got this gut feeling that if my government says I can't go there, I want to go there. Nicaragua, Viva Nicaragua, Cuba, Palestine, Iran. These are huge experiences in my travel life, even though my beat is Europe. I love the idea that, doesn't it say somewhere in the Bible, know thy enemy? I love this idea that it's really cool to get to know the enemy. Not to read about it in some agenda press that lets you hate the enemy, but go there and play backgammon and drink tea with the enemy. Drink vodka with the enemy. tell jokes with the enemy. I've got to know the enemy in Cuba, in Palestine, in Iran, in Russia. And that is so fundamental to peace. If everybody could try, when I go to their country and get to know them, it makes it tougher for their propaganda to dehumanize me as an American. And when I come home, it makes it tougher for my propaganda to dehumanize them. And if everybody traveled, it would neuter that propaganda, which I think is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And when you say yes to serendipity, I'm just thinking Eastern Turkey. I love, as a tour guide, traveling in Eastern Turkey. There's no famous sites. There's no turnstiles. It's just a cultural scavenger hunt. Every day you're out there looking for interesting things. And you come into a village that's never seen an American. I'm just thinking of an event I had with one of my tour groups. And it's news. There's a tour group. Their bus just parked on the main dusty square. The mayor comes out and he invites us over to his house. Huh. And we're all dancing in the mayor's house. And in Turkey, you shake your shoulders and you snap your fingers and you wiggle around. And everybody is just like cobras with some sort of an exotic snake charmer. And as the tour guide, I'm the big shot. And, I'm like the warlord, or I'm like the big king, or the kahuna, or whatever you call it. And of course, the mayor, he's got a big ego because he's the mayor of the town. So he shakes his shoulders and snaps his fingers and comes over to me and he says, "Come over with me." And he takes me over to the corner of the room and he says, "This is my Quran bag." It's this lovingly woven bag that hangs on a peg on his wall. And he says, "In this bag, I keep my Quran, and I keep a copy of the Torah, and I keep a copy of the Bible." Because the way I see it, we're all people of the book, children of the same God. And I just thought, that is so cool. The mayor of this town, dusty little town, almost off the grid, that I don't even know the name of anymore, wanted me to know that in his Quran bag was a copy of my sacred book right next to his sacred book. And we danced together. Is that a good moment?
That's a good moment.
Wow. And you had to take that serendipity, because you can't put that kind of magic in a guidebook.
Yeah. Lovely. Any other recent serendipitous moments come to mind?
When I'm traveling, sometimes it's frustrating because you go a long time without a serendipitous moment. And then all of a sudden you get an avalanche of these moments. Just a week ago, I was in the Italian Riviera, the Cinque Terre, and I thought I was going to a wine tasting. I thought I was going to go to somebody's little shop and try the wine. And it turns out this guy is an activist for preserving the historic terraces of the Cinque Terre. With climate change, a lot of the rain is coming more violently, and it's washing down the walls, and the walls are there to keep the topsoil from flooding away when you got hard rains. And they've had flash floods since climate change has made the overall rainfall about the same, but it all comes at the same time. So a lot of farming people are in crisis all across the world, but where I'm traveling in Europe. And he's with an organization that's trying to preserve these 1,000-year-old dry stone walls. And all of a sudden, my girlfriend and I get on a monorail train. It's a tiny little industrial track of steel that goes directly up these very, very steep terraced hills, so the vintners can put their piles of grapes and not have to carry them up and down on their back like you see in the romantic pictures. So Shelley and I are hanging on for dear life onto this monorail train as our cowboy-like vintner rides us up the mountain on this industrial monorail train.
I know what those are like. I saw them 2 years ago. I feel a little envy imagining you getting to ride up one of those little.
I got to ride. Yeah. They don't let regular tourists do it, I got to say. So, but there I am, hanging on for dear life to the grid of this, and hoping Shelley's okay. I've been on them before, so I knew what I was getting into. And then the view of the Riviera opens up as we get higher and higher. And my beloved little hometown, Vernazza, becomes just a little patchwork of pastels as the green of the vineyards because the dominant color, and the blue of the sea. And it's like a camera lens going wide as we go higher and higher up. And then we get up to the top of the vineyard, and I'm just blown away by the beauty. And he pulls out the shade in his little wine tasting spot. So he posts it like the flap on a tent or something. And then he's got a solar-powered cooler where his white wine is there, and it's such a hot day. And he pulls it out. He gives us a tour of the terraces and the vines. And then we sit down and we drink the wine right there in the shade. And I can see him gripping the wine bottle in a way that sort of frames his fingers and thumb, frame his family name on the label of the wine. And we drink that and we gain an appreciation of it. And we're surrounded by that beautiful scene. And I just think, wow, I am so blessed to be able to appreciate the richness and the passion in that wine culture right there that has been, back in ancient times, people raved about the wine from those very terraces. And they're still working those fields. And this is a younger generation that's working hard and protecting it. And then, getting back to the politics of it all, I'm from a society that says drill, baby, drill. And these people are on the receiving end of climate change and doing what they can to maintain their heritage in a world that's with a climate that is changing so rapidly. This is so poignant to me. It's so beautiful. It gives me so much reason to be engaged and working and teaching and sipping and enjoying.
Yeah. So I wonder, as you look back on all these decades of such educational, moving, transformative, serendipitous experiences, what have been some of the challenges, or are there any regrets with having this kind of life, or any particular things you've had to navigate that have not been so enjoyable?
If I think about the downside of my work, I'm so fortunate to have had the window of time I've had. It's been the perfect time to be a TV producer, a guidebook writer, a tour guide, and so on. I don't know what the future holds, but I've had a great 40 years, that's for sure. And I think I could look back and say, if I have a regret, it's that I've been so focused on Europe as a businessman because Europe is a big market. And I see Europe as the wading pool for world exploration for Americans. Much as India would be my favorite country, I don't teach India. My mission is to get these Americans to try something other than Orlando. And Europe is the first stop. So I go back to Europe, back and back and back to Europe. And other people who are just bon vivant are globetrotters, travelers that are friends of mine. They travel all over the place. They've done 5 times as much as I've done. But I'm a teacher, fundamentally. And my classroom is Europe. My big market is getting Americans to go to Europe. I can make more money and have a bigger impact by being aware of where people want to go, help them go there, rather than talking about Burma, you see. So that's been a frustration for me, is that I only do Europe. And except for this and that political side trip, Iran or Ethiopia or Guatemala, Palestine, I do Europe. So that's been a little frustrating to me, I got to say. Now you've got this whole invasion of people who see Europe through a screen. They wander through Europe just looking at their phones. They go to places, they don't even know where they're going, but that's where you go to get your Instagram selfie. They're eating Tex-Mex in Paris because that's #1 on TripAdvisor. This kind of new sensibility of crowdsourcing and social media and short attention span and celebrating a dumbed-down approach to travel. I want nothing to do with frequent flyer miles and duty-free shopping and Instagram selfies. And I just don't want to go where the trendy place is because it's part of Harry Potter or Game of Thrones. This is a new kind of tourism. And you're an academic, Lee, so you probably know what I'm talking about. I want to talk about in Ireland. I want to get a dual narrative approach to the troubles in Northern Ireland. I want to talk to Protestants. I want to talk to Catholics, and I want to see what they've done to sort that out, so that we can employ those lessons in the Holy Land, so Palestinians and Israelis can learn to live together. There's the Holy Land could learn a lot from Ireland. These are exciting times with exciting challenges. So it's just I'm so thankful for the career I've had as a travel teacher and a travel writer. I just had cancer in the last year, prostate cancer, and I'm so thankful to have been able to tackle that. And my doctor says I can consider myself cancer-free. And I just finished a wonderful 1 week of hiking up in the Dolomites of Italy. With my girlfriend, and I'm just very thankful. I've got lots to be thankful for, and I've got lots to do.
As we close, any one or two lines of encouragement for folks to step outside their known world and venture into another?
I would say, don't say have a safe trip, because if you want to make the world a safer place, you need to take that trip. Say bon voyage. Get out there. Learn about our home by leaving it and looking at it from a distance. Tackle truths that you were raised thinking were self-evident and God-given, and realize that we all have a different life story. We all have exciting differences in our cultures. And at the same time, we're all children of the same Heavenly Father. Raise the bar. Raise the bar. And let travel be a truly transformational experience. In the travel industry, which I've been a part of all my life, people throw around that word transformational travel, but they don't really do much about it. I believe travel can be and should be transformational. And then when I have that transformational experience, when you fly home, take it with you. And then employ that broader perspective as an American citizen and do what you can boldly, if you're a person of faith, as a person of faith, to make our country a country that really is a country that we can be proud of, a country that inspires the world with the attributes and the beautiful, beautiful values that we consider American values. Make it happen.
Yeah, I've been talking to Rick Steves, travel writer, host of the PBS show Rick Steves Europe, most recently the author of On the Hippie Trail, Istanbul to Kathmandu. Thank you, Rick. It's delightful to be with you.
Thank you for the opportunity to sort out some of these thoughts. It's always constructive to talk with somebody who's a thoughtful interviewer and learn about yourself.
Well, bon voyage. Bon voyage.
Bon voyage. You got it. Okay, Lee. Thanks and best wishes with your teaching.